Good morning, friends. This is Sumit from Core HRIR, and I'm going to be hosting this particular webinar. I'd like to thank the group for allowing me, a panelist today, to also host this specific webinar. Before we actually begin with the webinar, we are having some of our speakers joining us right now. I'd like to give you a brief introduction about Core HRIR and also our core partners for this particular webinar, ICFAI University. So, a few things about Core HRIR. In fact, you've been definitely a part of the group. So, very briefly, I'll kind of take you through what this particular group's journey has been like. In fact, Core HRIR started as a WhatsApp group sometime in 2017. And today it has about 5,000 plus HR leaders, including CHROs, and is kind of and comprises HR professionals representing multiple sectors, multiple levels or grades of the organizational hierarchy, professional consultants, academicians, and so on. Primarily, this group was built and conceived with the vision of becoming a world-famous group that focuses on sharing futuristic HR strategies and also brings to its members the latest and the best in HR best practices. So you'll definitely hear a little more about the group as we progress. I'd like to now also introduce our partners for this particular webinar, ICFAI University Tripura. And what I'll do is I'll play a short video on the university, and I think that should give you a good idea about what the university is. And I will now introduce you to the panelists for today's session. Joining me from ICFA University, Tripura, is the Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Bipul Haldar. We also have we also have other people joining us. So I think as soon as they join, I'll be introducing them. Professor Biplab is a BTech from IIT Kanpur. This is 1970 batch, and he's also a PGDM from IIM Ahmedabad. He has about 35 plus years of experience, and he has worked with various Maharatnas like Steel Authority of India, and so on. So, Professor Biplab, welcome to this webinar on how to analyze HR data and how to link it with ROI. I'd like you to first start with maybe give us a short, account of, your own career journey as an electrical engineer at the IITs, and how exactly you have used data or data analysis in your professional career, because I think that will kind of set the context for all of us here in HR. And hearing it from an engineer, a techie, and knowing how well you handle data analysis kind of jobs, operational challenges, I think it will be a pleasure, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Sumit Varghese, for giving a good introduction. So good morning to everyone. So warm welcome to all. Respected present here, Dr. Prasanji Dasgupta, Professor of Management. He is not visible. He should be visible. Yeah, you come this side. Professor Prasanji Dasgupta, Professor of Management, Faculty of Management Studies, ICFA University, Tripura. Professor G. Krishnamurthy, he will be joining. There is some technical problem. Professor Sumit Varghese, all honorable participants from industry as well from academia. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor actually for me personally and also for our university to welcome you all for this today's webinar titled How to Analyze HR Data and Link with ROI. In fact, I would like to speak a little bit about our university, ICFA University Tripura. This university started in the year of 2004 with the approval of by the Tripura Assembly as university, and then it is already approved by UGC, NCT, DEB, Rehabilitation Council of India, uh, uh, Bar Council of India, and we have got total 52 number of programs, and programs are there in various areas in engineering, science, allied health sciences, education, liberal art, means English, psychology, nursing. In management, we have got general management, then healthcare management, rural management, then we have law programs, special education, physical education and yoga, clinical psychology. This is one of the very rarest of the rarest program available in very few institutions in our country, which is approved by Rehabilitation Council of India, and library science program. In this university, this is actually part of ICFI group, having headquarters at Hyderabad, and there are total 11 universities. We are one of them, and we are very happy to inform you that this ICFI University Tripura, for whom we are all sitting here and discussing on the platform. So this university is one of the best universities in the Northeast, and our growth is very high. This year we have growth of admission on 41% growth. When across the country we've gone through pandemic, very serious issues, but due to the quality of teaching and faculty members and academics, there is a full trust on the stakeholders, basically to the parents and the students, prospective students, and also opinion makers like governments and teachers and faculty members for different universities across Northeast and other part of the country. There is a full trust on us. That is how we are 41% growth. So we are very happy to welcome you for this program, which is being conducted by the university. In fact, as I have been told by Professor Varghese to talk about my own journey. In fact, I did my BTech from Kanpur IIT, 81. Then I went to Ahmedabad, 81 to 83, IMA. And Professor T.V. Rao, he's a very famous HR professor and consultant. He also taught us HR. So I'm very privileged to study HR also during my academics. Then I started working in IT. Actually, I'm a techie in the beginning. So 83 to 89, I was in IT industries. And in these IT industries, those days also, even today, their database decision making was there. In fact, we have been trained in IMA, database decision making. Another panelist is there, G. Krishnamurthy, he is from IMC. They are also good courses are there on database decision making. So in my work, in my life, when I started working in Tata company in the beginning, so we worked with many industries for giving their IT solutions. So there also we have used the data for production planning control, then purchase management, and all those were there. But HR areas in payroll system was there those days, but it was not so developed those days, I can tell you. But over a period of time, I have started working in Steel Authority also in headquarter, where we worked on IT system, computer system, and there we worked on budgeting, operation budget, all database system. Then project management, we have used the data for managing the various projects of 7 steel plants across the country, and being the headquarter in Hyderabad, we used to handle the data. Sorry, headquarter in Delhi, we used to handle the data. And then we worked on specific area called linear programming. That is another techniques for using the taking a decision. So there are 16 iron ore there of Steel Authority, and 5 plants are there in that region. So linking those iron ore to the plants. So for decision making, the linear programming was used, and incidentally, my institution, IIM Ahmedabad, was the consultant. I was in the headquarters. So we worked on using the linear programming for decision making. So over a period of time, I was in the marketing, then I came to academics. But in our journey, because of our background of electrical engineering and management and the kind of training we got there, we are always inclined to the data. So even, yeah, but if you look at today, if you look at today, if you go to the any app, or you see how do you get a lot of advertisement from the IT, from the web automatically. It is nothing but this Google. There are a lot of analytics are going on. So in the business management, in sales and marketing, automatically they are capturing the data, and through artificial intelligence, machine learning, they are already doing it in a big way. And we all know that we are buying everything through online, but they know the supplier, they know through Facebook or our interaction, they capture the data and data analytics, they sell the product. So what happened? This database management is rampant today. Whether we know or not know whether we are part of that or not, but actually indirectly we are all part of that. They know what we think, what our preference, which site we go, what we talk, and not only that, even if you see politicians in US election. So US election, this election, last election, every election, they analyze the data. Even our own country, they are also having very big group, thousand number of approximately people are sitting, young generation across the country, different locations. They analyze the data from perception of people, what they write, how they do, and they take a decision. Now, what happened? This HR is so important area of our any business organization, whether it is education institution or service sector or manufacturing sector. Every sector, HR handling the most valuable asset of the organization, that is the human being. Now, yes, come. So they have, so since you are all HR, so I can talk to you directly. You are very important. So I am very privileged to address to you. So because you handle most important resources, that is human resources of the organization. Now what the employees, they are thinking about, what is their perception, what is their engagement, that also can be analyzed through data. Okay, so there are many ways of analyzing the data. Now as a HR, you make budget, you take, have a award system, reward system, then engagement you are finding out, then how their productivity comes, Now, many times what we used to see earlier, a lot of qualitative things used to be there. But I know, let me tell you very frankly, in our country, there are island of institution knowledge where all these database managements were there even 1970s, 1980s. We are product passed out in 1980s. For example, IIMC, they used to have a very good courses. Even their HR, even I studied IIMA, but my roommates, he went to IIMC. So from IITK. So we know they are all subjects are quantity based. People will laugh at even HR full quantity based. We at IIMA used to laugh at how they do HR full quantity based. So it was there rampant those days also. It is not there today, but it was confined to certain great institution of our country. But we are fortunate that this is not confined to only great institution. In the new education policy also, they have opened up everything. It's inclusive education. It is open to all. Therefore, as HR professional, it is very important for us to understand how the world is changing, how technology being adopted by all other professionals. Therefore, HR has to also come forward. I just tell you just small thing, don't mind about it. If you look at usage of computer, this so far, banking sector and healthcare sector was lagging behind. But banking sector for last 10 to 15 years, they have picked up, they have come forward. But other sector came forward, manufacturing sectors and others. Now, during this pandemic, because of situation, these doctors group, they also adopted technology. So far, they are not adopting the technology. They are forced to adopt this technology. So therefore, the situation has come today is such that for surviving in the industry, for doing well in the industry, there are a requirement for upgrade of knowledge. And this is a very good topic, these HR analytics, which are, analytics is a very good topic. So HR analytics is the application of analytics for HR. So this is going to enhance the career of the HR professionals, which this is the personal level I am talking about, but as an organization level, this is going to give an enormous outcome to the industries wherever you are all working, you'll be working. So therefore, I feel that this course, which being for which we are sitting today, you will get good idea about the HR analytics. So that that idea is also very important. So once your idea comes, then you can start looking into so many ways. Like you have a website, you have a course, you can attend here. So that will give a very good background for you to understand, open your mind for HR analytics. And as far as offering this program is concerned, what we thought about because of our experience that this is a very technology oriented course. So it requires some tutorial, some hand holding. Only giving a lecture is not enough. Therefore, we are also proposing that we will give you some tutorial kind of program sessions, some hand holding session when you can discuss directly and interact directly, and so that clarify your doubt and you can work on hand or certain things, because work on hand is very important. Like reading about a package or this is not enough unless you work through hand. So we propose that we'll also have some hand holding session, tutorial session with participants. Another thing we also would like to tell you that we would also suppose you are missing a particular program one day, we'll have a recording of that so that you can listen it other time. It happens. So that was also process will incorporate in the system here. And also we will invite in this program, apart from a regular resource person, faculty members, we will also invite from IBS, Hyderabad, academia and good institution from India and abroad to give you, and also from industries to give you certain exposure. Say industries from say HR industry who are all using HR analytics. So we would like to give you that kind of input to all the participants in this program. And last but not the least is that we all invite all of you, all the participants to visit our campus, because we are education institution. We also require your help and support for placing the students. And as an education institution, we also would like to connect with the industry. Therefore, since you all belong to the industry, we are interested to be in touch with all of you individually, and we also all welcome all of you to visit our campus. You have seen the photograph, that video. It's a very lush green campus, and we have got a tea garden surrounding, rubber garden. So nice place. You will enjoy coming here and spending time and interacting with our students and faculty members. With this, yeah. So apart, one more thing I just tell you, we have a full-time program, 52. Apart from that, we are also conducting 6 programs on distance education, which is approved by UGC and Distance Education Bureau. We are conducting 6 courses: MBA, BBA, MCA, BCA, MA Education, and B.Ed. So I wish that attending this program will give you good input about HR analytics to start with, and I wish all of you a very good day today, and also wish you all Merry Christmas in advance and Happy New Year 2020-21. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very nice of you to give us an introduction to your own career and also to the university. Dr. Prasanji Dasgupta is actually joining us from the university. Dr. Prasanji is a PhD in OB and HR from Calorex University, Teachers University. He is also a fellow from the Academy of HRD, Ahmedabad. He has worked with various organizations, including Amri, Apollo Hospitals, in GMHR level positions. So he brings with him a good blend of I think, industry experience and also sound academic experience. He's also one of the panelists for the session today. Professor Krishnamurthy, are you in? Professor Krishnamurthy?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to very quickly introduce Professor Krishnamurthy. He is actually a batchmate of Professor Haldar from IIT Kanpur. This is the 1970s batch. Though he looks a little young, but he is quite a veteran. He has about 35 years of experience, has worked with various organizations, is a PGDM from IIM Calcutta. And I think that says a lot about his orientation in terms of, statistics and analytics and all that. And Professor Krishnamurthy has worked with organizations in India as well as organizations in countries like Oman, Malaysia, Indonesia, UK, Germany, USA, and so on. He's actually been offering many HR analytics workshops, in-house workshops for the Bharti Airtel group, Indus Towers and all. I think he has, to his credit, something like 80 plus HR analytics workshops for the in-house HR team within the Bharti Airtel group. So we now have, I think, a good number of people who have some exposure to what I would call analytics from an academic perspective as well as from an industry perspective. We have about 60 people attending this webinar, and that's a very encouraging number. I'd like to clarify that we propose to make this a bit interactive. So there'll be a few slides, but at the same time, we will be open to taking questions during the entire session. So what I will do is just share the agenda with you so that you know what's coming. And I think we'll kind of take it on from there. Professor Krishnamurthy, anything you'd like to share before we start?
No, nothing major. I'm very happy to have finally logged in. We had some technical issues, probably the wrong address or something. Otherwise, nothing major. So we'll, get
Great.
going. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so what we propose to do today is, I think, give you just give me a second.
And there's Dr. Krishnamurthy. No, Dr. Krishnamurthy.
I'd just like to confirm whether you're able to see my screen. Professor Krishnamurthy?
Yeah,
okay. So
I'm able to see a screen.
Okay, so I think we have a very short window, but we'll kind of also make it somewhat comprehensive. What we'll do is actually talk about how you can analyze HR data, and also I think the most important thing is how can we link it with ROI. Okay. This is what we propose to do. One, we would like to share with you our understanding of not just what we call HR analytics, but also what is data analytics. And that's, I think, where people like Professor G. Krishnamurthy come in. They have a fair understanding of data analytics challenges in various functions. And so I think first what we propose to do is give you a basic understanding of what kind of data analytics issues you may face. From there, I think we'll go on to what kind of HR data challenges are possible. What are the possibilities with HR data analytics? I think you've already heard terms like AI, machine learning, and so on. So what are the possibilities with analysis of HR data? What are the kind of HR analytics types with examples that we've heard of? And I think most importantly, how do you kind of justify ROI of any HR intervention? And what's the link between using data, using numbers, analyzing data, and showing certain kind of ROI? So, Professor Krishnamurthy, if you can just give us an idea about, from a career point of view, professional career journey point of view, since the 80s, what are the kind of data analytics problems or projects that you've actually come across when working with industry? Before we go to the HR piece.
Sure. So my very first assignment, job assignment, was with ITC, the tobacco major. And surprisingly, in fact, that's where my interest in HR analytics really began, because my very first project, and of course, I had nothing to do with it. That was the first project that was going. But my first project was to do with an HR system. And we had to do analytics, come out with reports, and so on. So those days, I think the biggest problem that almost all of us used to face, and this is, I'm talking of 1982, 83, 84, that kind of stuff. So the key thing was, how could you get the salaries on time to everybody? That was
Mhm,
one of the biggest things that, we would be told from the 25th. Hey, you have to be ready. I mean, all set, print it out. The reports should come in. The salary slips should come out, etc.
mhm,
And of course, you had a set of reports on what are the feedback, especially in the canteens. This was ITC canteens. So, what is the feedback that people are giving? Send it immediately to the supervisors, etc., etc. Very fascinating,
mhm,
because when you look at what we used to do those days, and what were our, what caused us sleepless nights those
mhm,
days, uh, it is so different today after 35 years. I mean, you don't think of it because you've been through it and all that. But
mhm,
now when I look back and I say, my God, we used to worry about salary slips on the 26th. And, now
mhm,
it's pretty well common. There's no problem. In fact, I don't even print out stuff. But those
mhm,
days, I remember, if the printer went bad, you know,
mhm.
you have to do something, that kind of stuff. So it's
Okay.
very fascinating to see.
Okay,
Uh,
and I think you raise a very important issue, and this actually also highlights the challenges HR professionals face when working with data. You referenced payroll data, salary
right.
data, which is essentially numbers, and
Mhm.
you also referenced feedback data, which is qualitative. So
Correct.
I think one of the biggest challenges HR professionals face today when they undertake any analytics project is HR data is numbers based, maybe for a few functions like say payroll, comp and ben, and so on. We also
Mhm.
have recruitment data. But how do you deal with this large volume of qualitative data? How was the analysis done then, and what changes do you see happening today?
Right. Those days, as I said, it was very simple. My role was to get all the feedback and push it into some manager's cabin. And he would, whoever the person was, would go over it and say, okay, this is important, this is not, and, tell me to get lost, and he'd take care of it. So that was fine. Today, of course, it is very different. In fact, I was talking to few of my friends, and the feedback now is immense. Like this friend in Maruti, for instance, was telling me the kind of problems that people are facing today. We have what is called sentiment analysis. I mean, as IT people, we never worried too much about the softer side of so many things. Now you see that you have to do a lot of that. So somewhere around 2013, 14, I've been looking at how sentiment analysis is done, and what is the framework that we can use for that. So a lot of stuff that comes on Facebook or on WhatsApp and so on, we try to take that and arrive at a conclusion as to what people are feeling. Are they feeling good? Are they feeling bad about what we are doing? Or is there some, there are some areas that we can focus on? So
Okay,
sentiment analysis has become a big job now. I
okay,
think we are okay in terms of sentiment analysis in one language at the moment. And that too,
right,
when I say one language, I think I'm really sticking to some language like English and Hindi. That's it.
right,
But we have a lot more to go, especially in India. I mean, in the US and all, they use English mainly. In India, you go to Bangalore, people will be sending feedback in Kannada. You go to Bombay, it is in Marathi and English. In Delhi, of course, it's Hindi, Punjabi, and English. So you have a lot of issues open for us. And it's not been solved. We are still struggling to do it. But
Okay.
the English part, at least we have a structure where we can manage and say, okay, this is good, this is bad. And there are various things that, of course, we would be talking about in depth. I don't want to go further because then I would bore you by talking for about 2-3 hours without stopping.
Okay. Okay. So I think these are very valuable inputs. What you are trying to say is, well, you did. I mean, people collected feedback in the 80s and 90s, people feedback, and then maybe did some kind of cluster analysis or factor analysis. But today you have systems to parse through language and
Correct.
pick up sentiment, as in, if I were to collect feedback after this particular session, and if people were to type in their feedback through the chat engine, and if we were to feed it into an engine, sentiment analysis will tell us whether this experience has been largely positive or not so positive. Okay, so that's the kind of change you find in terms of how analytics has evolved today. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. Dr. Prasanjit, you have worked with very large hospital chains and Amri, Apollo, and so on. And as I understand it, this is a kind of people-intensive industry. In fact, because of the pandemic, we are realizing the importance of healthcare. And you probably are in a better position to help us understand what's the kind of analytics that you have seen when working in the HR function. What's the kind of difference do you now find in terms of the analytics that's being done? Also, if you can tell us why is analytics important, let's say, in the healthcare sector?
Yes. Thank you, Professor Sumit. As for the healthcare sector is concerned, you have very rightly said that is a totally human-intensive industry. And here the man behind the machine, they performs the most key role, core role in it. And what first thing that I faced in industry, in healthcare, is the attrition of the nurses. That is one point which used to definitely, make us disturbed. And at that time, particularly I am talking about say 2001 or 2002, at that time we never had this sort of, analytics things, and it was not so concise. And today we see that the HR is a strategic partner, but at that time just it was a transformation from the P&A role to the HR role. That's we are going on. So this is one point which used to make us very disturbed, as because the nurses, they are the key people for the patient care, and there used to be huge attrition. This thing worked in me, and I have tried to find out what is the turnover intentions.
Right.
So that was one of my topic in my PhD also. In fact, several papers also I made on this turnover intentions and leading to turnover. So we could, go in that, try to find out the turnover intentions, go in a, form of longitudinal studies, say every quarterly we are doing, and provide proper HR interventions
Right.
to the nurses particularly. And what we have found that yes, this gives result. If not in totality, but it gives result. So similarly to other category of employees also, say some good PROs, public relations, front office employees, those who are good. So looking after them and trying to reduce the turnover intentions. Because, and also one more thing has happened at that time. That is in those span, particularly if you see from 2002 to 2006 or 7, a large number of hospitals started coming in Kolkata. So the talent pool has remained the same because those existing private hospitals talent pool, they tried to poach. So we had this. So it was because of these factors we have entered into analytics, then gone into these things. Then also in while working in Calcutta Hospital in CMRI, we have introduced the balance scorecard. And this also, analytics has helped us in that a great, so that we can properly prepare a balance scorecard.
Right. Okay, I think very useful insights, very useful inputs, and so I guess people attending this webinar, people who are watching us, have now maybe I think a basic understanding of how HR analytics has evolved. We've had examples from ITC, we've had examples from AbbVie hospitals. So here's another challenge for you. I'm sure it will be difficult for you to just listen to us all the time. So what we have put together is a short quiz, and your responses on the quiz will also help us understand what is your own overview or perspective on HR analytics. I have shared a link to the poll through the chat engine. So if you can click on the link, I have actually shared the link to this particular poll. You'll probably see a screen like this, and here's your first question. Those of you who are unable to see the screen, maybe you can refresh your browser. Please use the link which I have shared. And here's your first question. What is people or HR analytics? Does it mean just computing how many people were retained, quarterly or annually? Does it mean compiling people data to solve some kind of specific problems? Does it mean just reporting how many employees we have by branch or subsidiary or geography? Does it mean that HR analytics is a way to find out what is the ROI from any HR intervention? Like say a 360-degree feedback intervention, a competency mapping intervention, or a restructuring intervention involving change of roles. You can start voting, and I can also show you the results that we have so far. Please vote. We expect at least 62 people to vote on this. And as you can see, there's already a big difference in terms of what people think people or HR analytics is. So if everyone has voted, I'll just tell you what exactly it is. This is based on a consensus that we now have in terms of what HR analytics is. Let's see how many of you actually got this question right. So say 60% of the people who are attending this webinar say HR analytics is largely about consolidating people data to solve business problems. I think, yeah. So a good number of people actually have this understanding that, when we do analytics, we should not do analytics for the sake of analytics. We should do it to solve specific business problems. So Dr. Prasanji, Dr. Krishnamurthy, what is your position on this? Do you find a lot of, experiments in HR analytics, sometimes I must say for the sake of doing analytics, rather than solving a specific business problem? What's your take on this?
Professor Prasanji, would you like?
Sir, anything. I will just. The thing is that just doing something for the sake of doing
never solves any problem, never solves any purpose. So, if you have really heart in it, that is very important in doing something. And if you practice analytics, analytics will definitely give you results. But if you pour your heart in it, say, and HR is one thing, see, we are measuring some intangibles which earlier people never thought of measuring. For instance, work engagement. This is a field which has evolved, and thanks to Gallup or thanks to Utrecht University, what they have done, particularly they have worked on it. And it has been found that this engagement of the employees is related to the performance, productivity, or profitability of the organization. And these are all proven facts. Thousands of companies have been surveyed, and then only they can. So here, it has happened only because we have tried to measure the involvement of the employees with the company. So these results could have been, and steps are being done in several companies for increasing the engagement of the employees. Sir, over to Krishnamurthy, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, my personal, I mean, in fact, based on experience, whatever we were doing in various companies, I mean, places where I worked, places where I've been consulting, I don't think there's any doubt that people feel that there has to be a specific need for some specific project. So I know that we did a lot of stuff on what is good for recruitment, what kind of profile is ideal, what kind of what do we need to do to engage people, as Prasanjit was just mentioning. We had almost invariably, we never had a theoretical kind of thing. Maybe I would do something which was essentially theoretical in nature, but that would be for my understanding of specific items. But by and large, if I go to any HR person, there is a very clear focus on how do I retain people in order of priority. How do I retain people? How do I increase the productivity? How do I, in fact, measure the productivity? How do I engage them better? And of course, things like which were slightly rarer, but I'm especially in call centers. This used to be fairly common, where people would say the job becomes very boring. So how long should we keep them on the floor and then replace them? So this was a very interesting aspect. Today, I think the big problem is, which I can make out on this after discussing with many people, is how do I keep employee morale up during these days of COVID? People are all sitting at home and wondering what to do. Uh, I'm sure everybody here would definitely know what I'm talking about, and it would be wonderful if I could get your feedback on that as well, because that would be very, very interesting. But I've had people coming and telling me it's such a bore having to sit at home all day, so on and so forth.
Okay. So I think useful inputs here, very nice insights. In fact, what you're saying is, one does not do analytics for the sake of analytics. One actually takes it up for solving business problems. Like an example of HR business partnering and so on. Okay. So I'd just like to reference something that Dave Ulrich has probably cautioned us against. In fact, we now have a lot of Fortune 500,000 companies undertaking. They have, some of them have full-fledged HR analytics departments undertaking various kinds of analytics projects. And assuming we have analytics for recruitment, for induction, for L&D, for comp and ben, for succession planning, for IR, employee relations, and so on. So there's no dearth of areas in which we can undertake HR analytics. But I think what people like Ulrich are cautioning us against is, what is the purpose? Because if you did a satisfaction survey and discovered something about the kind of employees who work in your organization, who stay or who leave, using, let's say, the latest analytic tools, he even says it reminds me of some of the old textbooks in OB and HR that I've gone through. All this research has already been done. We know for sure what are the factors that actually drive attrition.
we know already, and we are talking about, let's say, thousands of research studies undertaken with the kind of scientific rigor that you would expect. So we already know this. So the question he asks is, then why are we doing this? Shouldn't we just refer to what we already know about attrition, about retention, and so on? Why go through all this? While he does support HR analytics. So I would like your reactions on that.
I think he's very right, but there's one aspect that I think we probably would have to look at.
Right.
The situation in, let us say, the 50s and 60s is so very different from 2010, 2020s. I think it would be good to revisit the same problem and see what people are talking about. I mean, some of these environmental factors are unique.
Right.
What happened what's happening in India is, in fact, certainly new. We never had such a situation, like people having to stay at home, not because of illness or not because of inability to travel or something. You're staying back because the government is telling you that otherwise you'll fall ill.
Yeah.
So completely new, and I think everything changes because of that.
Right.
We have to look at that. So I would say I wouldn't go to the extent of saying, why do we need to do it, and go back and we can go back and see. Those are valuable inputs. But beyond that, I would like to just say that the environment has to be factored in. And that's very important in everything, including, and HR and analytics certainly needs that. What we really have to do is, when we are modeling, we have to build in that environment, which currently I don't think we are doing to the extent that we should. We make simplifying assumptions, which perhaps are a little too simplified.
Yeah, I would like to add here. See, we may be knowing all theories. It is all known that how employees are satisfied. And in the industry or in the organization, from the management side or HR side, we are also doing it. The question is that we are thinking we are doing, but what is the impact of that? So therefore, that impact analysis, in one organization, there we have to collect the data, feedback, and then analyze that. So that job is always there. All theories are there, how satisfied, but what are we doing? If we are doing it, how it is being perceived? Okay, the perception also important. So therefore, the role of HR managers with the HR analytics are always there, irrespective of the theories, what is proven. So that is my view, is that analytics are very much important for doing that analysis and looking at the perception, and then how to analyze the data, which package you do, how do you do, and those are very important aspects which you have to always learn about.
True, sir. So actually in this volatile environment, particularly in this VUCA environment, what we say, in this VUCA environment, when there is so much of ambiguity, and HR functionaries actually they perform under a lot of ambiguity. Say, sir, you are engineers, at least you have got a straightforward process. You are producing goods. Or some finance person is preparing his balance sheet based on certain data. But this HR person, he is having and working under several ambiguities, because you don't know how the turnover situation of the employees are going to happen. For instance, you don't know how involved these people are. We had it, particularly in many organizations, it's a system, as because the appraisal happens somewhere in the end of February. So some persons become very active workers, very active employees from December or November. So there's this effect of recency comes on his appraisal. So what happens? These are the things, but are we appraising him for last 3 months' work? We are not appraising him. We are appraising him for the last 1 year work. So these things are also can be combated by going into this sort of analytics is required, because figure-driven performance management system, particularly PMS, has to be made in the organizations, so that every quarter counts very effective for all the employees.
Okay. So I think point taken. What I gather is even if we've discovered things in the past about, say, what causes attrition and so on, it's not a bad idea to do some analytics today and maybe revisit those theories and models. And I think what Dr. Prasanjit is suggesting is HR should be a little more number friendly. So maybe there were areas where we did not pick up data, and maybe now we should look for people data. Here's your second question on the screen, and please feel free to vote. Go back to the same URL. Here's your second question on the screen. I think for any analytics project, you need data. And we are talking about various kinds of HR and people data. What are the challenges we today find with HR and people data? Is it inconsistent? Is it unclean? Just to give you an example of inconsistent means somebody in an employee database is reported as having one age, and in some other database, the same person is reported as having a different age. Unclean is definitely we don't have updated information, or let's say we have information or data about a certain person, but it needs certain refining. We have not updated, let's say, during the pandemic, the various kinds of courses that people have attended online. And another big challenge is HR it still has many silos. So L&D data, recruitment data, performance data, they kind of sit in silos. So for any HR analytics project, is it okay to come up with, use data which sits in silos? So these are the questions, and I would want you to vote on this. These are the questions. Please vote on these questions. As you can see, we are not indicating what the choice is for 80% of the people who have voted, because I think based on some analytics, we know people change their voting patterns depending on where they think the consensus is. So, you know for sure that when it comes to elections today, exit poll information is not published before the actual results are out. We are also trying to make sure there is no such effect when you vote. As of now, we don't know where the majority is on that particular question. But what we are seeing is a clear split between two options. So 40% of people have gone for some option, 33% of people have gone for some other option. If there are people who have yet not voted, I request you to please vote so that I can show the results. We just want to know where the group is. We are about 60 people who are attending the webinar. And here are the results. So 40% of people attending this webinar say HR data suffers from all these issues. But let's say 60% of people attending this webinar, and this is the right answer. So 60% of people are not actually sure whether all these challenges are true or not. So Dr. Krishnamurthy, Dr. Prasanjit, I would like your opinions, because when it comes to analytics, I think data is the oil. Data is what fuels analytics. And our challenge with HR data is it sits in different formats. It sits in different departments. It sits in different databases. What's your own take on this? Is it true that HR data or people data has all these challenges?
Absolutely, I agree with you, Professor Varghese, is that HR data suffers from all these challenges. And these challenges also happen because, these are all situational aspects. Problem is that today you are in extremely good mood and your survey has been done and you have been found to be extremely engaged. Tomorrow you had a fight with your wife and you have come to the office, and then you are not engaged, you are depressed. So what is happening? Your engagement rating will be less. But again, going back to a larger sample, if we go by the larger sample, we can get a broader perspective, and that's very, very important. Second thing is that for the HR professionals, these HR practitioners, we need to present before the board Now, for the presentation before the boards, and particularly in the balanced scorecard model, if we go, we will have to explain to the board that what was the engagement level in the previous quarter and what is the engagement level in this quarter. And the moment you are going for a sampling, there can be at best 30% error. That's what we talk about. That reliability comes is 0.7. So taking into account this 30% about the mood and the situational aspects and all those, we can say the rest is true. So what is happening? Something we are creating, and where we are able to validate it, because it is a validated data. As such, the moment your reliability of the data has come, it is validated. Nobody can question it, and this is an international standard. Sir.
Fair enough.
Right. But I just had one small point to add. I mean, I would agree with almost everything that's being said, and all these problems are, of course, there. But I think we might be, how do I put it, flagellating ourselves a little too much, because what I found is in almost every project, irrespective of whether it is HR or finance or production, data suffers from, it is a generic problem with data. Right. You have this problem of inconsistency. You have this problem of being located in various places. The data is unclean, I mean, inaccurate in many cases. Like even in Aadhaar card, for example, if somebody doesn't enter his or her date of birth, it automatically defaults to 1st January, which means that you have millions, probably crores of people who are born on the 1st of January of every year. Which is, of course, we all know it's not correct, but yeah, people use it. It still doesn't mean that it's not usable, but these problems exist. What we have to do, of course, is to handle our data collecting problem or data cleaning in such a way that we must make sure that the data is, of course, reasonably accurate. But it should not, I mean, we should not go overboard over it, in the sense that because the data is inaccurate, we cannot arrive at any conclusions, because we face these problems. So this is a common problem, and I think we have faced it everywhere, including in as accurate a place, so to speak, as companies which make vaccines and so on and so forth. I mean, they may not worry so much about. I mean, I would worry about the age, but I certainly won't worry so much about the date of birth, exact date of birth. Yeah. Especially at a certain point of time. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, if I'm 36 or 36 years and 7 months, I think it's not particularly relevant, not necessarily. So we have to make sure that we build in enough checks to make sure that it does not create a problem. That's about the key thing that I wanted to mention. Yeah. Sometimes we get worried about it. Sorry. Yeah. So I like. Yeah, actually, I'll buy your point, because I have shared my Aadhaar card with 2 banks, and one bank has made me 5 years younger, which I don't mind at all. I mean, I wish I had such a bank. But here's the challenge, Dr. Krishnamurthy. Here's the challenge. These banks today process loans, and I'm talking about the kind of analytics they do. These banks today have algorithms which actually figure out whether somebody is loan worthy or not. So, you can imagine what happens if you have a variable like age, which is fed into the algorithm, and a bank takes a loan decision. So I'm sure I may get different kinds of loan disbursements from the 2 banks, because I believe, if the data that's used to feed these algorithms is not pure, I think the kind of decisions we take would also be equally challenging. Very true. Very true. But this is a significant change, 5 years. Mostly I was looking at Aadhaar card values, which are, it says 1st January 98, when actually I know the person was born on June 6th, 98, or whatever. Doesn't make a difference, to be honest. Okay. But 5 years is, I suspect, a data entry problem which has happened. And of course, that creates its own train of problems. I mean, I've found that happening in many, many places. Like, for instance, about 5 years ago, I remember I was calling up some call center on behalf of my father, who then happened to be 85 or something. And I was telling them I'm unable to enter his data because the year of birth is not there. You start with 1935 or some such thing. He was born in 1929. They said, oh, you mean to say that he's older than that? I said, yes. And you have people who are like that. And they said, oh, we have designed it badly. Yes, I know. I mean, we will have to get back to you. I said, thank you. So these kind of problems, I would suspect a bad design and nothing else. We have to take care of that. A lot of times, I think we expect too much from people when they enter, and I think we should build in some error-proofing codes when we are entering data, which that's something that we learn by experience and so on. Now, I'm not asking people to enter their date of birth, which many people do now. I think now it's fairly good, and it can be done very easily. I remember, of course, in the 80s and all, can't resist. I used to sit and write code to check the date of birth, which we don't do now. Now it's so much more, far better. All the stuff that I did that time should be discarded completely. It made no sense. I mean, we should never have to sit and enter somebody's date of birth or so on and so forth.
So I think people attending the webinar, feel free to ask questions. What we've done so far, the kind of ground we have covered is we've kind of told you or informed you what HR analytics is and what HR analytics is not. I think you'll agree that it's better to do analytics which actually solves a business problem or a real HR operational problem, which can then have an impact on the business. I think the second thing we've kind of clarified is that the raw material for all these analytics projects, which is data, can be compromised. And that's, I think, what you're getting a wind of when we give you these examples. So it's very important then to collect the data. I think today, Dr. Krishnamurthy, we have software which refines data. So if I were to kind of load a data set which is already compromised or which is inconsistent, you can definitely expect the software to point out that there are challenges with the data set. Would you agree, Dr. Krishnamurthy?
Absolutely. We have, in fact, there's some very good research projects that have been working on this. And one of the things that I've really used is something called the Potter's Wheel, which was based on research that was done in University of California at Berkeley, where they analyzed the data and check whether there is inconsistency and so on, which we can use here. It checks fundamentally things like date, the location of the person, and so on and so forth. So some of these are very, very helpful. Obviously, it cannot handle everything. Like if you made a complete mess of your name, I'm afraid nothing can be done about that. But most things can be handled. Almost all identifiable data, which is important from the point of view of privacy and security, most of it can be handled. Of course, you have to recheck those. But yes, the software is there.
I have a question. We have an audience question. Is it possible to show or reference some of the tools that are used for performing or undertaking HR analytics projects? I understand that the tools are the same that we use for any kind of business intelligence analytics or BI tools. But are there specific tools which you'd like to reference, or if you want to show them?
Well, I wouldn't be able to show them right now, but definitely the tools are there, and you can set up stuff even on. Even with Excel. I mean, one of the things that I've been talking about with many of the companies is you can use Excel itself to set up validation techniques so that you minimize the number of errors that you make. Clearly, Excel is not one of the great data validation engines, but there are far better ones. But Excel is something that is available everywhere. So you can make sure that the data that you enter is reasonably accurate. And as I was telling somebody, we used to design stuff which I would refer to as being something that a class 5 pass person should be able to cope. You have a security person sitting when some information comes in. Can you make sure that that person enters stuff which is reasonably accurate and you can make sense so that later you can come back the next day and make sure that you have enough to go on? Maybe you can go back and validate, but it should not be such a mess that you can't make head or tail of what the person had written. So you can do that even with Excel, as I was pointing out, simply by using simple drop downs and so on, or using what they call data validation. Today, it's pretty powerful. I mean, it's fairly good. Not, I would say, completely foolproof, but yes, it's there. Otherwise, we have a lot of other tools. People like Oracle and so on are there. Now it depends. It's now it's a question of economics. How much investment are you prepared to put in to clean your data? Obviously, the more you invest, the better the tool, but then the return on investment might not be quite as great as all that. You have to put in a lot of money, and the increase over, say, Excel is, say, a few percentage points. So you look at it from that perspective as well. But lots of tools, good tools, and today in data, when we teach data analysis, we tell people that they must use these tools for cleaning data, whatever you do. And there's some very good tools, as I said. Some good R&D work has been done in UCB and so on. And many of the companies here are using it because Bangalore is a hub of data, of analytics. They have some wonderful tools which you can use anywhere, and which we should, I would say.
We have an additional question from Sriram. What Sriram would like to know, and maybe Dr. Prasanji can answer the question, how do you design KPIs and KRAs for different teams, say sales, logistics, and so on? So how would you design KPI and KRA? And if you can then so the question is, I think, for both of you, if you can also give us a very short, quick view on what a KPI is and what purpose, because it's a piece of data and performance related data, performance measure. So what purpose does it serve in an organization? And when you're kind of coming up with KPIs and KRAs for different teams, how do you go about it?
Thank you. See, first of all, make a better understanding. We can touch in the Pareto's optimality theory. Thing is that if you see the job, 80% of the time goes for doing 20% of the, looking after the 20% of the work. And 20% of the time goes for looking after 80% of the work. Here comes the role of the key performance indicators. So the organizations, they design the key performance indicators. The jobs will be measurable, and this comes from the job analysis. Actually, the analysis of the job is being done properly so that you are forming the key performance indicators. But one thing we should not forget, the whole thing comes from the organizational objective, and which percolates down to the layer after layer, so that the organizational objective can be achieved. So it's coming in the form of definitely pyramidal structure, that is there, but indicators are designed, and it should be definitely, the indicator should be measurable. The indicators should be reachable. Rather, in a small sentence, we can say it should be smart. So that is how you are going to find out design the KPIs, and which comes from KRAs. That is the key result areas or key performance areas. So it is by this it is being done. Find out the key performance areas, go into the results, but again, above all, it is the enterprise goals, enterprise targets, which percolates down to the ground level, so that it can be achieved.
Yeah, Dr. Krishnamurthy?
Just a quick point. I mean, I don't think there's very much one can add to what Dr. Prasanji has just said, but I would just like to mention that in most teams, what we used to have was the specific team concerned, sales or logistics, which I'm looking at. We would get the key people together in a room and spend about a day in a workshop. Usually we do that so that they could at least isolate themselves and identify their key result areas, which we've done for every kind of team. And on the basis of that, we would, in fact, you'd get a huge, first it would be wide, as wide as possible, put in whatever you want. Then everybody would vote. And we identify the top 5 or top 7 or top 3 or whatever. These are the critical things based on what Dr. Prasanji said about using Pareto optimality. So we get a list of, let's say, 15 or 20, and then we identify the top on the basis of popularity from among the people who are sitting there. Identify the key result areas, and from that, then derive the key performance indicators as whatever was to be done. I think this was this used to be quite helpful, because then the people themselves were committed to whatever was written. Clearly, it is not 100% foolproof, because predicting what is going on, what may happen in the future, because almost always my key performance, key result areas and key performance indicators are based on the past, but it tends to be fairly accurate. However, in a convulsive environment like this, I'm not sure that this would always work, but it will work in most cases. So I think that's the way we normally work, although it has its minor weaknesses, because if it's an emergency, there is a convulsion, there's a discontinuity, then these may not exactly work out. But by and large, I think these are fairly good. And the most important thing, people have a commitment to it. They buy into it.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just reference something that I have on KPIs, especially HR KPIs. In fact,
Right.
if you were to kind of look at the kind of KPIs we come up with HR, you can probably categorize them as efficiency KPIs or effectiveness KPIs or even outcome or result KPIs. So to give you an example, if suppose you were to come up with KPIs for the recruitment function, how many open positions are you able to close in a month or a quarter or a year is an efficiency metric. So those KPIs are important. What's an effectiveness metric? I think the effectiveness metric here is from among all the positions that were closed in the first month or the first year or first 6 months, how many candidates who became employers or probationers, how many of them have been retained? So that's an effectiveness measure. How many of them went on to last, say, more than 1 year? So there was no infancy attrition beyond 1 year. So that's also an effectiveness measure. How many of them were confirmed in 6 months? That's also an effectiveness KPI. And so I think when we come to KPIs, the challenge today is we are not short of KPIs. There is actually a profusion of KPIs. If you go for any ERP, like say an SAP or what have you, all vendors actually give you, the leading vendors give you more than 3,000 KPIs for HR alone. And I think that's basically problematic, because the job is not to generate as many KPIs as you want for, say, HR function or sales function or for supply chain or production. But, as Dr. Prasanji said, look at the 20% which might have an impact on the 80%. So maybe that's what I think is important when you come up with KPIs. In fact, less is actually more when it comes to KPIs. And I'll just give you some samples. In fact, if you look at all the kind of KPIs, I've picked this up from various HR professionals who've attended our workshops. If you look at the kind of metrics we capture, something like what is the average length of service for all current employees? What is the average retirement age? What's the average salary? So you can go on to not just 3,000, 5,000 KPIs like this, but maybe even more than 10,000. But I think the biggest challenge we face is when we come up with these KPIs, we in HR, and that's where the ROI comes in, we should be able to show that by measuring these kind of KPIs, we are operationally efficient, we are operationally effective. And by measuring these kind of KPIs, we are able to impact business strategy. We are able to impact business results and business outcomes. So there's a lot more which, of course, we can share. But because so I think this is any kind of suggestions, Professor Krishnamurthy?
I think this makes a lot of sense. I mean, we have a huge number of KPIs that we can look at, but we really need to focus and say that we will only our attention span is clearly finite, so we need to focus on a few, which is why we refer to it as key. If I try to do far more than that, probably I'm not looking at the key.
Right.
I may dissipate my energy, which is something that is not desirable. We should focus, as Professor Prasanji also pointed out, we are looking at the organizational objectives. Now, if my objective is growth, maybe I will need to focus entirely on recruitment and data and looking at profitability. Then probably we need to look at having people who are there, retaining them, making sure that attrition is minimized, and so on and so forth.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we forget about attrition when we're going in for growth, but I'm saying that we focus less on it and focus more on recruitment at that stage. So those kind of things are important. So we should not, say that one it comes at the expense of another. That's the key thing that I was pointing out.
Yeah.
I agree absolutely to Professor Krishnamurthy. In fact, the KPIs, yes, there are a huge number of KPIs that forms. Again, we need to do the proper analysis and bringing out the KPIs. But particularly, a tool which always I admire a lot is the tool of the balanced scorecard, what this Norton and Kaplan has provided. Here you see the strategies gets divided, strategies are simplified, and by going through this, if you see the entire organizational strategies, it comes to lesser than 100. The objectives comes to lesser than 100 for a large organization, if you properly compile with the strategies. And then when it percolates down, all these KPIs which are coming to the respective departments and going to the respective, then the section and divisions, it is percolating further, and by which the work is getting more and more quantified, and the employees also gets a very clarity of what is expected out of him, and also the measurement, what he is, how he is going to be undertaken the measurement, so that he can reply that yes, this was my thing and I have achieved the objective. So thing is that it is so very important as a measure of fact to have a smart KPI. Or this requires for employees motivation, gives a clarity in working, and also is targeted at the organizational objective.
Okay, so there are a few more questions, and I'll kind of share this with you quickly because I'm not very sure whether we'll be able to handle all the questions. But here's the first one. Maybe Professor Krishnamurthy, which tool would be the best for anybody interested in HR analytics? I know you've already referenced the value of Excel, but any other tool which people should use for HR analytics?
I think there are plenty. Really speaking, I would probably look at it from the perspective of what the person already has. That means if I'm somebody who's very familiar with programming and so on, I would say please look at Python and R, because the number of analytics libraries that they offer is something stunning. It has become so good nowadays. I would not have said the same thing probably even in 2015, but if you can cope with Python and R, which is not too difficult again, or even SPSS, the libraries that are available are huge. Again, if I'm doing a lot of time series analysis, I would probably go in for some of the time series analysis packages and so on, where I would not touch Excel at all. Time series is something that people involved in the economy of the country would certainly be looking at. Then you have the databases themselves now are so strong that they provide a lot of very good analytics features. Oracle does it. SQL
Yeah.
Server does it. They're all very good, excellent analytics tools that are coming up with them. So it all depends on what you have and what you'd like to do. But if you are starting from scratch, as I keep saying, nothing is as good as Excel for the initial few, shall we say, 6 months to 1 year. If there's nothing else, please start with Excel because it's very general and provides a lot of power, and you can add on to it.
Yeah. I would also add Tableau here because of the kind of
Absolutely.
dashboarding features or
Yeah.
possibilities. Because today, I think,
Tableau is very good for visualization.
yeah. So great. Another question for Dr. Prasanjit here. Is it possible to measure all HR functions, or is there something we cannot measure in HR?
See, if you ask me from the research perspective, anything that exists can be measured, if at all it exists. So, this is as per what Heidegger said. Now, thing is that, yes, it can be measured. Tools are there, say psychological perspectives. But again, it is not possible to measure it individually. Again, I tell you, because things change, and also it is very important whether the respondent is aware what you are asking him so that he can give the right reply. But again, if we go in a collective mode, things can be measured. I won't say it precisely, it's not possible precise measurement, but we get a generalized opinion and we are able to find out the trend.
I think the bigger question is what is it that we'd like to measure from any of these HR functions, whether it is industrial relations and whether it is comp and ben, whether it is succession planning, any HR functions. I think yes, possible to measure. Another
Yes.
question, what is this deal with predictive analytics? And what is predictive analytics, especially in HR? What is it that we can predict about people? Professor Krishnamurthy, your question.
Well, predictive analytics always, descriptive analytics is where we start, where we just describe what is happening. Predictive analytics would be something that is obviously very, very applicable in the case of HR or whatever. When I'm it starts right when I interview a person. When I recruit that person, can I predict where that person will be? Where he would rise in the organization. Would he be a success? Would he leave within 6 months or 1 year and so on and so forth? Is there something that I can do? Just like the way we do in credit cards when we are giving it out. Is this a high risk or a low risk and so on? So is this person a high risk or a low risk as a person I would like to recruit? So how do I set it up in a predictive analytic framework? Similarly, if I'm promoting somebody, moving him into a new job, is that person likely to do very well? Or will that person be an average run-of-the-mill kind of person? Obviously, you'd never predict somebody who's going to fail. You'd never promote somebody who's going to fail or something if you know that. But you want to know whether that person is a star performer or is, well, a normal run-of-the-mill performer and so on. Can we set up some analytical frameworks for that? So that's the big thing with predictive analytics. At the moment, unfortunately, predictive analytics is still not as great as it should be. It's made huge steps. It has taken very many steps forward because I recall that this was being tried out as early as the 60s and 70s in GE many years ago, where they were trying to predict, where they were trying to come out with exactly these kind of answers. Couldn't do it because we did not have the tools necessary then. Now we have far more, but we are still struggling to arrive at a good framework for many of these HR functions.
Yeah, I'll just share a bit about what are the various types of analytics, and I think also give you a flavor of how we can do it here using, let's say, data about the people attending the webinar.
Right.
So basically, whether you are in finance or sales or production or supply chain, there are these four types of or broad approaches to analytics. One, of course, is the most basic, which is descriptive. I can ask for information about your like demographic information, like your age, the kind of organization you work for, the kind of status you have in your organization, and so on, and then put it all together to see if there are patterns. Now, that's descriptive. The next stage is, of course, the diagnostic stage. So, suppose we have a challenge here. In fact, we had about 60 people who joined the webinar early, and we have about 40. So maybe let's say when we and the others who founded Core HRIR want to find out why is it that people drop out? Why is it that people join in the first half an hour? There's a huge spike in the number of people who join the webinar in the first half, but maybe in an hour or so, the numbers drop by 20% or 30%. So this is a problem. In fact, it's like a business problem. So the diagnostic here would be based on the data we collect from all the attendees. The diagnostic is basically to find out why is it that people are dropping out of the webinar, a webinar like this. So we have collected a whole lot of variables, and it can be the time of the day, it can be the day of the week, it can be the problem we have with this medium right now. You're probably hearing some sounds in the background. It could be the quality of the speakers. We are also a variable here. We don't rule ourselves out. So why is it that we put all these variables together and try to find out that can we correlate any of these variables strongly with people dropping out? Maybe we will discover some variables are more important than other variables. And then what I think Veer and company can do for the next webinar is take care of those variables and proactively target those kind of variables. So maybe with that kind of approach or actioning, we can actually predict how many people will drop out in the first half an hour and how many people will stay for the next 1 hour or 2 hours. So through descriptive, a collection of basic information about attendees, by trying to correlate an event like dropping out of the webinar with the variables we collected, we can actually come up with a model, a webinar attendee model for Core HRIR, which can actually predict how many people can drop out and at what time intervals on a webinar like this. I think the prescriptive part is basically coming up with recommendations for Core HRIR in terms of what they should do to improve, what actions they should proactively take to actually improve attendance, or I think prevent people from moving out. I think the biggest challenge we face with predictive analytics is we don't know what variables we should focus on. I could ask for gender. Maybe the people who dropped out of the webinar in the first half an hour were all ladies who had certain engagements today. There's a lot of work to be done at home. Or maybe they are men in the age group 20 to 30. I don't know whether people who dropped out were basically from the north or south or northeast and so on. I really don't know. I'm looking for a needle in a haystack, but I need to collect all these variables to actually run my analytics. So maybe I think with all these variables, I could start with 100, but I also need to zero down to maybe just a few. It could be 8 or 10 variables which actually predict why people drop out or why people attend these kind of webinars. So that's I think the deal about analytics: the descriptive, the diagnostic, the predictive, and prescriptive. That's something that I think has been happening for a good amount of time, at least in the other functions like supply chain, like finance, like sales. It's come a little late to HR, is my take, but it's actually critical. Your views, Dr. Prasanji, Dr. Krishnamurthy?
Yes. Uh, you have excellently described actually taking into the situation, just taking into the situation of today. And it's also a trend in the webinar because people start dropping slowly. And this, again, here is coming the role of the analytics. Definitely. We have come with the descriptive, then it is coming the diagnostic phase. And we are now trying to find out that what the people have left. What is their age group? What is their gender? To which region they belong? To which profession they have come from? So, so many things are coming here. And definitely, So the reasons are coming up, and thereafter we are going to analyze based on the reasons, trying to find out that how many belongs to each group, and thereafter, reducing that group, because if the number is less, very less number of, perhaps it is 0 or 1 or 2, so then reduce that group, and then we can go into the vital fews.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very quickly, I think you made. You came out with some excellent points. So I would just say that the only thing which I would like to mention is that one big problem with predictive analytics is that we almost invariably make the assumption that the background or the environment is the same as what it has always been. That's not always true, as we ourselves know this year, but many of the problems come from the fact that our predictive framework is not set up. It can be dynamic, and we usually cannot factor that in. So that's some of the big problems, both in predictive and prescriptive, which we to keep that in mind.
Yeah, there's a question here which could be related. The question is, what is the optimum span or period of time which we should consider when we come up with correlation results or correlation analysis? So just for our for people who are attending the webinar, in fact, almost all forms of analytics, diagnostic onwards, rely on statistical operations like regression and correlation. And there are various types of regression and various types of correlation. We would not want to put you to sleep, but Dr. Krishnamurthy here will probably give us a good idea as to when we are coming up with correlations, what are the challenges? I know one of the challenges, anything can be correlated with anything. And that's a challenge.
And unfortunately, inappropriately also. But but basically, there's no real restriction. Theoretically or in practice, there is no real restriction on is there any time period when you match or whatever, barring of course correlation between two bits of data at the same time period. Usually that will not be particularly great. But for most time series analysis, we allow correlations across say one time period away, 2 time periods away. That doesn't matter too much. It depends on what you want to do. You are probably trying to correlate what has happened in sales between this year and last year, trying to identify what changed between now and last year. Clearly, this is a very good way of checking to see if our environment has changed in some manner. Everything else is the same. I've kept everything the same, but my data for this year is far lower or far higher than last year. So something has changed. This year, obviously, we know what is the problem, but these are the things that we try to find out with correlation. If the number of people in a company has been different, we added, say, 20% of people. Has our sales increased by 20%? Or has it increased by 50%? Or has it dropped by 10%? We look at that and try to arrive at conclusions. Oh, this means that there were some factors in the environment that changed, maybe some new laws, maybe a completely, the people we got were not particularly good. So correlation can be done across any range, and we usually get some very interesting information, although sometimes when we do completely random correlations, what we get is meaningless, actually. I think that is always there. So you must be aware of that before we jump into a correlated values and say that there's a wonderful correlation with, as somebody said, we checked up the speed of, we checked up the composition of the moon by seeing how, which element on Earth had the same kind of deceleration of radio waves, and found that the best one was cheese, old cheese. So that is obvious. Well, you can get it, and it has no relevance to what we are trying to add.
Yeah. So great. I think I have another question here, which is, this is more about ROI. So what is talent mapping and what is capacity building activities? And how can we link it to ROI? And so I think this is also probably something that we have to touch upon, and we have some time. Any ideas, Dr. Prasanji, what is ROI for an HR person? I can understand for a production person who convinces the top management to invest in a piece of machinery or to buy a plant or a plot of land, there is a certain kind of return which is kind of computed. But when it comes to people operations or HR operations, what are the kind of ROI that, let's say, these people can use or come up with to justify any HR intervention?
True. So ROI, this is a very big question always have come up in the HR people's mind. Because earlier, as you know, HR used to be a cost center and people used to say that he knows very good HR. CEOs used to say that my HR manager knows very good HR, but he doesn't know business. So this is how, the whole thing, this HR analytics or people analytics concept, trying to bring in the measurable form, whatever, in the also coming in the numeric, so that I can make the people explain my contribution, has become so very important. And as HR managers, people always wonder that, you see, the finance person is showing that yes, this is the savings I have come for the organization, or a production guy is saying that yes, this is the total quantum of cases, number of case of production we have done for this whole year. The marketing person is telling that I have made such an outstanding sale. And what HR, what have you done? Incidentally, all are part of the HR, to tell you frankly, even the marketing person or finance person, whoever is coming. But ultimately that HR manager, he has got nothing to say in the board meeting when he is asked. Here came the concept of return on investment for the HR, is that organizational skill index. Say, what was the skill pattern of the organization and what was the number that used to be last year and what is the number this year. Now again, bringing a correlation with the performance of last year and this year, it can be found to be significantly related. Because the skill is bringing in certain form of changes. Now you can say that, do you feel only for the skill it has happened? Obviously the answer is no. But yes, definitely it is the talent based, enhancement in the talent based has yielded certain results on the total performance on the organization. So here comes the return of investment. And also we relate in terms of, that is, the impact of the training on the production. Again, is it totally for the training or due to some other reasons? That is important. But again, there is a significant relationship between development of the manpower with the total production productivity of the organization. It is established fact.
I think just to reference what Dr. Prasanjit has shared here, I'll also share some things that we know about ROI and what are the challenges with measuring ROI and all that. So I think in principle, what we talk about return on investment is basically a financial approach to computing what's the extra I get if I say put $1 or a rupee in a particular project or in a particular intervention. I think the larger question is whether HR people should actually try that, because we deal more in intangibles than we deal in tangibles. But at the same time, I think if you look at ROI research, which has again been happening since the 1960s and 1970s, people like Dr. Jack Fitzens and all, they kind of tried their best to kind of come up with some kind of ROI models. It will also reference the work done by the ROI Institute. What they have tried to do is, okay, does HR impact tangibles or intangibles, or both? And I think what I'll kind of very quickly show you is, in a sense, it's possible to measure tangibles. This is a very famous retail chain, and this is something that I think the people in retail will understand. So if, for instance, you kind of work on employees, which is your employee engagement interventions, and retail being a highly customer-facing or customer interfacing industry, there are retail chains which believes that the first customer is the employee. So you get a certain budget to work on your employees, because in this kind of a model, this is also an ROI model that a retail chain in the US discovered, that by kind of making investments in employees, it was possible to make a big impact in terms of customer experience, in terms of customer satisfaction, in terms of customer retention, and also in terms of customer retain. So they kind of came up with an ROI model which says, if we make these interventions on employees, they are likely to be happy and stay longer. If we can retain these frontline employees in our various retail chains, then they are likely to bring about a better customer experience. Customers are likely to be far more satisfied. If they are satisfied, they are likely to stay back and come back for more business. And that's ultimately going to raise profit. So, in fact, with this particular case or example, they have kind of statistically worked out, by making a, say, dollar investment in certain HR interventions to improve employee engagement or satisfaction, what is the dollar return in terms of customer retention or customer business? So definitely there are models which show that HR can have tangible effects, but it's not a direct causal chain. It's a mediated or intermediated kind of causal chain. So maybe I think when you come up with ROI, it would be very difficult to say just because of this HR intervention, business turnover went up, because there are just too many variables. And I think the other example I would reference is from an Indian company, which had to kind of convince the top management about the kind of ROI they would get by putting people through various kinds of, or a specific kind of training program. So in this particular case, this is a Delhi-based organization. What they tried to do was teach teams which were responsible for conducting raids or basically random checks, because power theft is a common issue across India. So they were responsible for conducting raids and then also securing, compromised meters and so on, and then reporting it. But then most of these cases would land in a court. And then when they kind of looked at the data, what they discovered was almost in all cases, or a good number of cases, people who were actually accused of power theft were not charged with it. So basically, the company lost not just the power, but also lost the chance to win a court case. So what they kind of did was, this was an L&D intervention. They kind of worked with lawyers to find out what SOP they should follow when the raiding teams go to collect these devices, or to find out whether there is power theft or not. So the lawyers working in these courts trained these squads and helped them understand how exactly they should, what SOP they should follow, so that in the eyes of the law, they would have a chance of actually winning the case. And because of this training program, they could kind of bring down the instances of power theft. So it's not that, and this of course is a tangible ROI example. So I think it's not that we cannot come up with ROI models. We can, and possibly I think the challenge would be to go about it in a measured way. Like, what was the situation before? What was the intervention? And what actually happened after? Your views, Professor Krishnamurthy?
No, I would entirely agree with you on some of these aspects, which, too often we try to look only at numbers. We treat ROI as only in terms of numbers, but I would say something like this. This would be closer to some kind of prescriptive analytics, so to speak, because maybe I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm doing something correct, but the methodology being used is incorrect. So that is where interventions make a lot of sense. Your example of the lawyer coming and explaining. That's a wonderful cross-functional kind of example of how to use ROI in HR, so to speak. Certainly, we need to get it from there. Uh, Similarly, we probably need to look at a number of similar cases in return on investment. I mean, we are sometimes we try to come out with a black and white kind of answer. If this person comes in, will it be good for the organization or bad for the organization? Which I think is the wrong question. How can I make it such that, how can I make the environment such that he or she would be a very valuable asset? Maybe that is what we need to look at. And that is what we need to do when we do some kind of ROI approach. And that is something that we very often tend to, miss out, especially because, like, say, I'm at a certain age and I have a certain, paralysis of thinking. I think everything should be along the lines that I had envisaged as it was when I was probably 20 years younger. When the person coming in is probably much more in tune with what is going on in the world outside. We need to worry about that. And ROI then becomes much more flexible and, much more useful for the organization.
Dr. Prasanji, your views on ROI?
See, one thing is that definitely we look for the measurement.
Yeah.
Measurement in terms of what? That there has been an investment on the, might be talent retention, talent attraction, or in other HR functions, or even recruitment functions. So an investment has been made. What is the return? And it's quite natural. And this was the reason why HR function earlier could not come to that extent, high level, could achieve, which later on happened that all the companies now have got HR directors. But previously it was not like that. It was never thought of. And people said that he knows good HR, but he doesn't know business. This was the basic assumption. So there needs to be a return on the investment that has to be made. Now, thing is that yes, there are many other factors which leads to enhancement in performance or deterioration of performance. But there is a factor which needs to be identified, that is the contribution of this process. That is one point. Second thing is that until unless you identify how you are going to rectify, that is second thing. So whatever interventions we are giving, that is for rectification.
Right.
And so we need to identify and rectify instead of looking much for the correctness, because correctness and preciseness, I'm sorry, it's not correctness, it's preciseness. It's not a physical science. That we know that hydrogen and oxygen will mix up and water will come up. It's not that, it's something we are not, it's a social science. So definitely that risk is there even in other fields also. Say advertisement has been given for selling of a product. How can you measure that your advertisement has yielded this much of business, or your representative has given this much of business, or your distributor has created this much of business? You cannot. That factor is always there in social science. But for developing a correct roadmap, definitely it has to be measured. And incidentally, what happened? Still now, analytics in many of the industries of our country has not come up such in a big way. And HR, definitely they does a lot of work, but as far as these things, analytic things needs to be developed more and more, imparting analytic trainings by the universities. Say, in our university, we have designed a course specifically focusing on certificate course of 4 months for the HR professionals and practitioners. And incidentally, the course shall be conducted only in the evening of Saturday, keeping the need of the HR professionals and the other professionals, and in the morning of Sunday. So it can be imparted excellently and using the different softwares that we were talking about. So that is the reason why we need to focus as HR professionals more and more on analytics, measurement, prediction, description, diagnostic prediction and prescription. So these things that we need to highlight, we need to do, the HR professionals, so that we can get better, more and more importance in the organization, because it is the most important resources we have got in our hand, and which can be stressed to the maximum extent and can do the miracle. That's what I feel, sir.
Yeah. We'll just take one more question before we close. And this is the question. Those of you who can see your screen, the question is, what is the hardest part of people analytics? And you can vote now. The options are, what is the hard part? Is it combining different types of data? Or is it implementing the changes that you discover through your analysis? Is it mining different kind of data sets? Or is it developing actionable insights through data analysis? You could use the same link we've used earlier, and please vote. This is our last question of the webinar, and let us know what your views are. So here are the questions. What is the hardest part of people analytics? And please vote on this question. We have people giving us very different opinions. So we'll also tell you what is the hard part. And here are the results. Yeah, I think this is the correct answer. One of the biggest challenges is implementing
The changes.
The results of HR analytics. It is implementing what we.
I think I would agree almost entirely, because that has always been the stumbling block. We arrive at wonderful, actionable insights. We have good data, everything. But then we have to understand how can we implement the changes. And this is, of course, something that depends upon the organization. We learn a lot from different courses and so on, but implementing the changes is always a challenge. And I would agree with I think that's true of almost any area. The implementation of changes is huge. We are seeing it all over. Yeah.
That's very true. I agree with it that the implementation of the change is the toughest area. And definitely, I think Professor Sumit, as an OD interventionist, you know very well, and you'll agree with all of us that how difficult it is to bring the change management and do it, because we all are reactive to change. It's the natural instinct of the human being. They simply don't like change. Whatever lifestyle is going on, just pass on with it. So it is the change management, again changes the inevitability and changes the requirement for survival, otherwise you will die. So will have to be changed, but which is very tough.
Yeah, so I'd like to quickly reference a conversation I had with a workshop participant. The gentleman had been recruiting for 30 years plus, and he said, when I ask candidates questions about their family background, and if I discover the person comes from a broken family, so the variable is broken family, I'm not likely to hire the person because my experience says, people from broken families cannot be good employees or they may have fitment issues at the workplace. So I kind of asked him questions that I would ask anybody who takes up HR analytics. How big is your data set? Have you studied 1,000 plus cases? Have you come across research articles in OB or HR which say people from broken families are likely to be bad hires or poor employees? How big is your data set? And the gentleman said, based on experience, based on intuition. So I think it's very difficult to change this mindset. We had a workshop participant in the same workshop, a lady, an HR head, distinguished herself. She started crying and she said, I come from a broken family and I have distinguished myself in every possible way. So I think the challenge today for HR professionals is we'll have to think statistics, we'll have to think data sets. We cannot operate on the basis of people stereotypes. And I think that's the biggest benefit that I see from HR analytics. So in any organization, line people have various kinds of stereotypes, whom to hire, whom to fire, whom to promote, but they don't have the data to back it. But if HR professionals are armed with these kind of approaches to taking people decisions on the basis of data, on the basis of basis of analysis, I think we could do a much more job in getting the right people, grooming them, and also growing the organization in the process. Your thoughts, Professor Prasanji?
Yes, definitely. Definitely that the HR professionals needs to be equipped with this sort of techniques, this sort of, I'd like to say also this an art. So they can go for the predictive analytics, and again these are all accepted facts. This will help them in their own career as well as convincing their board, their bosses that yes, this is going to happen and this is something new thing which can be done in some of the companies and also in some of the companies which is in existence of these things. It will further develop the career of the persons as well as help the company.
Yeah, Dr. Krishnamurthy?
I think that example that you gave is actually it's probably summarizes everybody's, what happens everywhere, in the sense that we have our stereotypes. Sometimes I recognize my own biases, but much more dangerous when I don't recognize my biases. I mean, I should have biases, but if I recognize it, it's fine. But if I do not recognize it and I keep persisting with it, that is a huge problem with any kind of change that we try to implement, of course. But as long as I keep trying to make myself reasonably open-minded, I mean, I might say, oh, this guy is 20 years younger than me or 30 years younger than me. What will he know? I mean, if I'm with that kind of mentality, it's very, very difficult to listen to anybody who's younger, obviously. But probably we'd learn a lot more from them. I mean, I think these are important things that we need to know. And I'd probably, yeah, that's something that I think you can find in almost every field. I mean, my heroes of 30 years ago are clearly better than the heroes of today. Or the sportsman who played during my era, the cricketer of my era was better than the cricketer who plays today. I mean, all that, these normal things are there, but we somehow have to get out of it. It's very difficult. But we do, I mean, things do change. I mean, people at least recognize that these biases exist. And I think in HR, particularly, especially when I try to evaluate somebody, it makes a lot of sense if I realize that I'm blinkered with some of my old biases, and probably I shouldn't be. What is happening is probably much more relevant to today's world. So these are things that we have to figure out. And I think data helps. more important, I have to change my own line of thinking to understand the data helps. My basic axiom must come in. If I say that, no, this is the way I was taught, tough, I can't do much. We'll have to still persist, but yeah, we have to, these are important. I agree.
Actually, one point is that data analytics makes everybody objective oriented,
Yes. Yeah.
which we've been also talking about in management. What is the objective?
Yeah.
Asking objective of any activities, that data analytics is actually forcing us to do,
Yeah.
objective oriented, or, in academics we call always research oriented. Of course, yes, we don't use the word, but actually the way Professor Sumit was talking about data and these is nothing but research. So then you become really objective oriented, not subjective oriented. So this is a very good thing. So what is data analytics talking about? ROI.
Yeah.
Of course.
So I think thank you, sir, so much, and thank you to Haldar sir for staying put. And just for those of you who are attending the webinar, ICFA University Tripura, Dr. Prasanji, Dr. Krishnamurthy, and myself included, we have put together a 3.5 month. It's actually a 4-month intensive HR analytics workshop, which takes people through the basics and also the most advanced stuff that we see in HR analytics today. I think our purpose here was to sensitize you in case you'd like to actually pick up the skills and do some kind of actual analytics projects. You're welcome to get in touch with Core HRIR or any of us to know more about the course. So I'm sure there are all kinds of courses on HR analytics, but you're always welcome to get in touch with us to know what is unique about our course and what is it that we can offer. A big thanks to Core HRIR for making this happen. We are grateful to you. Also grateful to you, Haldar sir, at ICFAI University. Your video, I think, has encouraged many of us to actually visit your university and also hopefully meet you. Any final words, sir?
Sir, actually, this is a good opportunity for us, as I was telling, to connect with all the HR professionals. They are a very important part of our society, who actually nurture the most important human resources in the country, in the industry. So it's a good opportunity for us to connect with you, and we wish that today's program is going to open up the mind of all the people, including me. In fact, I also learned quite a lot. I have taken the note of it. So we all learning every day, and that is what is the motto. So all of us should learn all the time, regular basis, every day. And this was a good program, and I really appreciate for everyone for attending this program.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So those of you who have asked us questions, we will get back with answers. I'm very sorry we could not take those questions. We've received a lot of questions. I'll be sharing that with Dr. Prasanji, Dr. Krishnamurthy here, and we will definitely get back and give you what we think are proper answers to these questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your participation. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sumit, and very well handled.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all.